And stopping by the Carne Asada for a few minutes. Los Angeles Times beat writer, covers all the sports, Dodgers, boxing, everything. Jorge Castillo, friend of the Carne Asada. Jorge, ¿cómo estamos?
Todo bien, man. How you doing?
Doing okay. I'm still a little sad that Canelo won, but that's a conversation for another day.
The guy was 40 years old. What were you expecting?
Don't get me started. I am not a fan of cinnamon, so we'll say that for the opposite.
Hey, as Dylan Hernandez says, he's as old as I am.
So Jorge, what we wanted to chat with you is obviously making a case for one Julio Urias, the guy that has quietly gone out and done the damn thing. He's had, if I'm not mistaken, up to this point, it's either 18 or 19 quality starts, and he's quietly done it without a lot of fanfare. I was kind of curious. Do you think he is going to be is he locked in as the Cy Young, or do you think there might be some competition with some of the other guys?
Yeah, definitely don't think he's locked in. I think Sandy Alcantara is really good competition for him. I'm really big into innings pitched. I think last year Zach Wheeler should have won the Cy Young over Burns just because he had such a commanding lead with innings pitched. I think that's very important. But I do think it's between Julio and Alcantara. You can make an argument either way. Again, innings pitched for Alcantara. He's been dominant for the whole season. Julio's down the stretch again, like last year. It's been great. He's pitching, for a first-place team. You can make the argument that Julio's pitched better against good teams. You can make the argument that Alcantara has a ton of pressure on him every time he pitches because his team stinks. So it's going to go down to the wire, really. So either one I think would be a great choice. And Julio, like you said, it's crazy that he's done it under the radar because he came up with so much fanfare. Him as a teenager, being a Mexican here in Los Angeles, there was tons of pressure, tons of attention nationally. And these last 2 years, he's been, you could argue, the best pitcher in the National League. You can easily argue he's been the best pitcher in the National League, and he's not getting a lot of attention, hasn't been on an all-star team yet. And it's pretty crazy when you think about the trajectory, right? How he started and where he's at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And no disrespect to Sandy Alcantara. I think the number 2 guy is Kyle Wright. Only because he kind of similar to Julio. He's done it very quietly, very under the radar. Innings pitched they're right there. I think he's at 175 and Julio's like 170, something like that, as of today at least. And the insane thing too is quietly Tony Gonsolin and Tyler Anderson also have some respect as far as the Cy Young considerations go. So I mean, the Dodgers got 3 guys. If I'm not mistaken, the other 2 teams with multiple guys in consideration, the American League, the Houston Astros, and the Toronto Blue Jays have a couple guys too. So it's kind of crazy to think the Dodgers have 3 guys. Julio leads all the things, including ERA. He's the National League ERA leader as of now. And again, to your point, quietly done it under the radar. So let me ask you this, just to play devil's advocate. But if the season were to end today, and I know innings pitched is a huge barrier for you as far as the voting goes, who would you vote for if you had a vote?
Alcantara. Yeah, I'd vote for Sandy Alcantara. He's I'm looking at it right now, 220 and 2/3 innings, 5 complete games, a shutout. I mean, I think that stuff matters. You can make obviously you can make the argument that Julio, if he was given that leash, he'd be doing just as well. You can easily make the argument as well that if he was given that leash, he wouldn't be doing as well. This guy's done it. I think the reason why we see pitchers pitch so, they don't go as deep into games as they used to, is teams are scared of them getting injured. They're scared of them third time through the order getting beat up a little bit. And this guy's gone on and done it. He did it against the Dodgers in Miami and LA. I think it was pretty terrible for him. But, I think he's right now, I think I just really value that stuff, man. He leads the National League in WAR, baseball reference WAR for pitchers. So I give it to him. But I think, again, Julio, trust me, I've seen the numbers. He's up there. It's tough to say. He leads, like you said, an ERA, an expected ERA. His peripherals are better in terms of exit velocity against things like that. There's a bunch of numbers out there. You can go on Baseball Reference, Baseball Savant, and see it all. But I'm just really big into innings pitched. I think that's such a valuable commodity because the drop off between Sandy Alcantara and whoever's in the Marlins bullpen is very, very steep. And then whereas the drop off between Julio in the 7th inning and Evan Phillips. It's not that steep. If anything at all, it might be even better at that point, right? A 7th inning Julio with a one inning Evan Phillips. So I just really value innings pitched.
I will say this before I toss it over to my friend Juan, who's gonna be upset. I will say that Julio, the thing that stands out to me this year, different than in other years, even that World Series season, when he came out in relief and was just lights out, just banging dudes. Mr. Consistency. He's been so consistent all year. Aside from that July outing where he got blown up by the Cubs, I feel like that outing kind of was what was kind of turned the gas on a little bit, if you will, just because he's gone out and he's had that insane whip the rest of the way since then. The strikeouts even have been pretty consistent. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like 8.7, 8.6 per nine, which you hadn't really seen that from Julio up until this season. And he started 29 games, and I think he's only missed 2 starts all year, which, again, you really hadn't seen that from him because of the leash. There was an innings count. There was, whatever. So I will say that. And the other thing is he's in a rotation that started the year with Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, and then obviously Tony Gonsolin took, kind of the baseball world by surprise. And Andrew Heaney has been, turning some heads as far as that goes. And Tyler Anderson has also turned some heads, right? So now, there was some doom and gloom, CC Juan Ramirez, going into the postseason rotation. But I feel like the rotation as a whole with him at the top, Kershaw and Tyler Anderson, it doesn't look too bad. And no disrespect to even Tony Gonsolin. I feel okay about it. But Juan, what do you think?
I'm sure Jorge is going to agree with me, but before I get into the Prince of Darkness routine, I want to defer to my colleague Alicia, because Alicia, stands for Julio. So there's no bigger Julio fan. So I'm going to let Alicia go because I'm telling you, I think Jorge is going to agree with me, but we'll see.
So you're going full heel like Jorge Castillo?
No, he just tells it the way it is, and I appreciate it. I'm going to talk to him about that, but I want to let Alicia go with all the positivity and all the niceness first.
Well, I see now. I feel under pressure. Hello, Jorge. Thank you for joining the Bleeders podcast.
I feel under pressure. She says.
I feel pressure because what I'm about to say might not be considered positive. I am positively a huge Julio fan. I take it personally, the disrespect Julio gets, and this is not just this season, the season before, the 20 games won, all that good stuff. My question to you, Jorge, is I loved your article so much. It brought me so much joy to see it when I opened my LA Times, okay? Because I feel like not even from his own organization does Julio get celebrated or get love, put some respect on that name. Am I imagining it because I'm such a Julio fan, or is this something? I mean, our friend of the Carne Asada, Dylan Hernandez, wrote about that Julio's upbringing and the culture of being a Mexican could hurt him is there a campaign like the Heisman campaign to be the Cy Young winner, or what do you think? Am I being emotional?
No. I think they're actually his camp is very much trying to get Julio to win the Cy Young. Trust me. We've already heard. But I do think there is some validity to what you just said. I mean, earlier this year, still seared in my memory that Dave Roberts basically said that Max Fried was the best National League left-hander. And Julio Urias was on his roster. Never mind Clayton Kershaw. So I think there is a degree of why aren't the people necessarily getting behind him, the people around him, his peers? I think his peers respect him a lot. One of his best friends on the team is Walker Buehler. I think they respect, the maturation process, how he's gotten here over, from a teenager to being this kind of like bell cow, I guess, every 5th, 6th day, he's the guy. And really being the best starting pitcher on the best team in baseball, the best team maybe in a long, long time, at least regular season wise. So yeah, I think there's some of that. I think people are finally noticing in the last few starts that, hey, this guy's numbers are crazy, and he's pitching really well for the best team in the league. I think we're seeing it. If you watch the Dodgers broadcast, they're really in on it, as they should be. This guy is, to me, a top 2, top 3 Cy Young candidate, and he should be discussed in that manner. And one thing I want to add is sometimes voters voters have different criteria in terms of like what they, why they vote the way they vote. Sometimes it's, teams in first place. Sometimes it's the innings. Sometimes it's we started last year with Corbin Burns, and his innings, he was by far the best pitcher. Sometimes it's like, maybe they'll look at Julio and be like, this guy's been the best pitcher in baseball since last July. He should be rewarded for that. Not just this season. Guys have different criteria and all that. But I do feel like people are finally realizing it. And with Julio, he's also, since 2020, he's been, great. And the problem is he's going to be a free agent after next year. So there might be not much time to celebrate.
I know. And that is, again, in Southern California, Julio is revered. Okay. And let's give it even the Southwest. But what does it take for writers to pay attention? And you said it yourself. I've been hearing a little more about Julio, right? I mean, even in local radio, I'm starting to hear more and more of the guys like, Julio should be number one. He should go first game, yada, yada, yada. And I would like to throw in that's all of a sudden, but I'll take it. But what about nationally? Is there something the Dodgers should be or could be doing to help Julio be on the radar of the East Coast, the Midwest voters and writers? Because I don't see it.
Yeah, I think at the same time, I do think Julio being on the Dodgers is a huge help. I think people across baseball will look at him and a little more because he plays for the Dodgers. I know we're on the West Coast and, East Coast bias and, being out here on the West Coast for 4 years, it does exist to a degree. But I think Julio is helped by the fact he's on the Dodgers. Again, he's not a household name, but I would argue most baseball players aren't anymore, in 2022, besides Aaron Judge, I guess, nowadays. But I do think when it's all said and done, the writers, for the most part, because I know a bunch of them. Like, we don't vote at the LA Times, and I haven't voted. I've chosen not to vote for years now because I just think we shouldn't vote for these kind of awards for different reasons. But I think when you sit down and you look through the numbers, which I think a lot of these guys will do, whoever has a Cy Young vote, they'll look through the numbers. They'll have their own criteria. They'll look at, importance to a team, how the team's done. There's a bunch of numbers you can look at. You can manipulate the numbers in any which way you want to. And I think Julio will get his fair shake. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to be up there. He might win it for all we know. I think it's been a close race, a really close race.
So then, as a fan, and we shouldn't start like this online Twitter campaign.
Hey, I mean, that's what you guys should do. I think every right? fan base gets behind their people, right? Whether it's MVP, Cy Young, rookie, whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, I think it's expected, right? That you guys, the fan bases, should do that.
Well, I hope so, because it hasn't been started yet. And why won't Roberts just call it and say that Julio is going to start game one? It's got to be him or Kershaw. I'm stressed out. I'm going to give it over to one.
It's going to be one of those two for sure. And I think there's different reasons as to why they don't announce it, whether, it's injury or matchup or whatever. I mean, they don't have to announce it right now. And usually they don't. They usually don't announce it. I mean, they'll have like 6 days between the final game of the regular season and the first game of their postseason, because they had the first round bye this year with the expanded playoffs. And the Dodgers being around them now for a while, they don't say anything unless they have to. So this is just par for the course. I expect Julio to be the game one starter. He's been the best pitcher on the team all year.
Strategy. I get it. Thank you for talking me off the ledge. I'm hopeful, and I'm hopeful we get, the Dodgers find a way to keep Julio, but I'm already stressed. I'm gonna
that's a discussion for another day. We can talk about that maybe in a year or so.
Go ahead, Juan. I'm gonna take a breather.
All right. So joining us is Jorge Castillo of the LA Times. And I don't think Jorge knows this, and I don't think anybody knows this, but Jorge joined the Five Timers Club today because this is the 5th time. For those of you who watch Saturday Night Live, but this is the 5th time we've had him on the show. He has been on the show more than anyone. So I don't know if this says more about your lack of taste, Jorge. But honestly, for me, I really appreciate your candor. I trust your writing because you call it the way it is. I don't see an agenda there. Alicia mentioned it. You, and very quickly, I think, have become the king of the profiles. Going back to what you did with Kershaw, what you did with Julio, it's not only is it excellent writing, just read the first paragraph. That whole sequence with La Virgen de Guadalupe, to me, was a photograph. And I think that's very hard to accomplish in writing. And you made it look very, very easy. So I want to give you your kudos, not only for being very good to us and coming on the show and sharing your hot takes, But I mean, you deserve your flowers, man. That article, all your articles are fantastic, and
Appreciate
I
it.
trust
Thank
your
you.
opinion.
Thank you, man.
But
Appreciate it.
everyone says I'm the Prince of Darkness, so here we go. And I know I trust you're going to tell me how it is. To me, and you read that article, man, you do a really good job of setting up where Julio got his composure. And for me, that's what you need in the playoffs. That's the guy I trust when things are going to get rough, that he's going to find a way to get through it. What I am concerned about is all these injuries are starting to mount, and I'm afraid the Dodgers are going to get cute. They got cute last year with the way they used Julio. I'm concerned they're going to get cute this year on how they're going to use Julio instead of just, and I get it, there's the Tommy Lasorda side where you're just going to run him into the ground and you're going to ruin his career. But if you get a championship out of it, hey, look, I'll take it. But am I being paranoid here to say that Julio might not be used the right way, and that's going to cost the Dodgers in the postseason?
I think Julio's graduated this year to a level in which they will not get necessarily too cute with him. We saw last year Max Scherzer. They got cute with Max Scherzer for Game 5, and I think that ultimately cost them. Right? I think there's a learning lesson. There's a lesson to learn there. I think with Julio, last year he was their number 3, so they can play around with him a little bit. This year he's their number 1. I don't expect him to. I don't expect them to what they did in Game 2 against Atlanta last year is bring him in because they can't. He's going to pitch Game 1. I think there's going to be fewer opportunities to get cute with Julio. I don't think they're going to have an opener for him. Corey Knebel is not going to come out and open a do or die playoff game, against whichever team. I think he's the guy. I think he's graduated to that level. Now, I think they will get cute in other ways because that's what they do. They get cute. I think Gonsolin is like a Game 4, not necessarily starter, maybe a bulk guy. With Heaney, right? Maybe they'll start Gonsolin and Heaney will come behind him or the other way around. I think they will get cute in different ways. I think the Dodgers, you guys mentioned like the doom and gloom of the starting rotation. Not having maybe no Dustin May. Gonsolin being the way he is right now, maybe no one's really sure about him. Walker Buehler, obviously, and Clayton Kershaw this time a year ago was about to strain his elbow or whatever it was. So he's not necessarily a lock to remain healthy the rest of the postseason. So the Dodgers have to get cute in ways just to make sure that these guys get to the finish line. And in 2020, it was a different structure, right? These guys played every day in the playoffs in 2020. There were no off days. So they had to get cute in different ways, but they got very cute in 2020. And it worked. Julio pitched the last 3 innings in against the Braves in Game 7 and against the Rays in Game 6. They're going to basically, when we say they get cute, what they're trying to do is just put their best pitchers in, out there as much as possible. That's like the whole thing. That's how they think about it. Whether it's a starter, a closer, a middle guy, whatever. If Evan Phillips needs to be in the 5th inning with the bases loaded with no outs, he's their best reliever. They're going to do that. If Julio is rested in Game 7 and is 6 outs to get, it's going to be Julio who's going to get the ball. Now, obviously it's backfired a few times, but I think this year with Julio, just given the fact he's probably going to be their Game 1 starter, he's graduated to this other level of now at this point, annual Cy Young contender. I think it's just hard to get cute with him because they want him to pitch deep into every start. They want him to go 6-7 innings, and that's just going to give him fewer chances to get cute, quote unquote, bring him out of the bullpen later on because they need him to log those innings as the elite starter that he's become.
So, I mean, your piece on it mentioned it. I mean, we're all sitting here saying he's clearly the number 1. I mean, Julio has taken the torch now in this Dodgers pitching staff. Has he also taken the torch in terms of, I know to compare him to Valenzuela is, you got to be careful there with those comparisons because Fernando Mania was something very special and I don't think it's something that can be recreated. But there are, and this is the other thing that I appreciate, I mean, you're a Latino writing about Latinos, so we're getting a Latino perspective when you're writing about these people. How important Urias is to that fan base, because we've said it, I don't know how many times, we say it every episode. The majority of those fans in Dodger Stadium are Latinos. Now, it may be more Mexicans than Salvadorans and Guatemaltecos, but the Mexicans come out and they love themselves Julio. Does Julio recognize that he is carrying a torch, so to speak, that it's an unfair burden for him? Because it is unfair, I think, the comparisons to Valenzuela.
Yeah, I'll start with a disclaimer that I start with all the time out here is I'm not Mexican, so it's I grew up on the East Coast. I'm Puerto Rican. My parents from Puerto Rico, so I didn't grow up like my parents didn't love Valenzuela. Like, I didn't grow up with like that sort of feeling. He didn't represent me, right? I was more of a name a Puerto Rican player. Like Roberto Clemente for us.
Yeah, right.
The guy. But like my wife is Mexican, so like I've slowly but surely, and being around Dodger Stadium all the time, the jerseys that I see the most are Valenzuela and Julio and Kershaw. Yeah. Those are the jerseys I see the most. Just being around it, more and more now these last few years. I think Julio does recognize that he's, when talking to him, he talks about it. He can't even get dinner out here. He's not saying like it's a bad thing. Just like this is the way it is. He understands that he's a Mexican in Los Angeles. I think he likes it. I think he appreciates it. I think it's it's the circumstances surrounding Fernando and reading up on it and talking to people here in Los Angeles. It just it's just way different. Going back to the way Dodger Stadium was created and on the land that it was created on, and I just think it's not the same because that brought out a whole segment of fans that didn't exist before, right? This idea that the Dodgers represent me now here in LA. Like since 1981, that fan base has been here. Now Julio is like refueling it a little bit, right? The idea that a kid from Culiacan is here and he's like the best pitcher in the National League, and that's the best place to do it. If you were doing this in Philly, it wouldn't be the same. Right. Philly, it's just not. It's not in New York. It's not the same. So I think he recognizes that. Yeah, but Fernando's like another level because, even when I was in Culiacan, everyone talked about Fernando. He's not even from Culiacan, but everyone loves Julio too. They talk about Julio. Everyone knows about Julio. It's the two Julios down there. It's Julio Urias, Julio Cesar Urias, and Julio Cesar Chavez. Those are the two people everyone talks about down there. So, but I think it's unfair. But at the same time, Julio is his own person. He's doing his own thing for a new generation that I think really appreciates it.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough, guys, read his piece if you haven't already. It came out a while ago, so I'm hoping you guys all read it. It's a great profile. He also wrote another piece on a guy who's a hero of mine, and that's Jarrin, man. Jaime Jarrin in his last year, and everybody who listens to this show knows I am dedicated to giving that man his flowers because he deserves it. You just recently have an article on Jarrin, and I have to give you kudos because you mentioned Los Defensores. And this is why I say I appreciate that the Latino is writing these, because I don't know if somebody else, if a white writer would have brought in the Los Defensores reference, because people know Jarrin from the Los Defensores commercials. So,
right. I'll give credit to two people for that one. My wife, who grew up listening to Jarrin, but also, out here in Los Angeles, Univision all the time. Her parents were always listening to Jaime. And also the commercial. She's the first one who told me about those commercials because I didn't grow up out here, so I didn't know about them. So, but just being around them, they always talk about the commercials. And then Dylan always brings them up too. Dylan says that's how his wife didn't know him as a baseball broadcaster. She knew him as the voice, the spokesperson for this law firm. But so just having those people in my life, those two people in my life, I guess being associated with them, it's kind of been in my mind that and I've watched them a lot on YouTube. Those commercials. They're a good time. They're a good relic, I guess. I don't know.
So by the time you got here, Jarrin was already a sacred cow. So right. What were your first impressions of that, Jarrin? Because how aware were you? We talked to some people from the East Coast, and they had said they had heard of him. Right. But how aware are you of his impact?
I had heard of him. That's the way it was. On the East Coast, East Coast and New York City is very much a Latino haven as well, but it's it's New York is Puerto Rican Dominican now. I grew up in Massachusetts, which is now growing. I grew up there. When I grew up there, it was most Latinos are Puerto Rican. Now it's Puerto Rican and Dominican, so we don't have it's just different. But I had heard of him. You hear about especially in the business as I got into the business, being on the East Coast. You hear these broadcasters and stuff. But I wasn't aware of his impact until again, my wife told me she grew up listening to him. She didn't even know who Vin Scully was until like high school. You know, and she grew up in Montebello, Huntington Park in Montebello. So, you know, because her dad's a huge baseball fan. So he would always have him on in the car and at home and stuff. So, and then slowly but surely, you know, I meet him, and you know, I've talked to him. You know, I talk to him all the time in the press box cafeteria. We talk about different things all the time. You know, his memories. You know, how is it going? Just anything. You know, whatever comes up that day. And just having, you know, and then formally interviewing him a few times the last few years has been great. And the thing that I always come away with is, you know, the last few years we've seen a lot of Dodgers legends sort of pass. You know, starting, you know, the first one when I was here was Don Newcomb. And then since then, it's been, you know, we just saw Maury Wills. It's been Tommy Lasorda, Vince Scully, Don Sutton, you know, a lot of guys. And Jaime is a guy, he's been here since the second year. He's been with the Dodgers since the second year they were in Los Angeles. He's one of the last living links to those early days. He's one of the few guys still around who was with Sandy Koufax in the 1960s. You know, like, I think no matter if you listen to him or not, no matter if you liked his broadcasting or not, whatever, you have to appreciate that, because that just doesn't exist. It's 2022. We're seeing more and more now every day now. Tommy Davis this year. I mean, people passing. And he's one of the last, you know, connections to the early days of Major League Baseball here in Los Angeles, here at Dodger Stadium. He's been at Dodger Stadium since it opened. And just like talking to him, man, I was talking to Jose Mota the other day about Jaime, and he was bringing up just an example, like, not really. We're talking about Jaime, and then we're talking about his dad, who's still around as well, Manny. And, you know, we're just having a conversation. And Manny Mota played with Roberto Clemente. Like, he played with him. They were like brothers. Jose is telling me a story about how they were like brothers. How, like, Roberto went to the DR, and Jose has like a something in it, like a picture in his mind of his Roberto Clemente in the passenger seat and his dad in the driver's seat. And he was telling me stories about Roberto Clemente. And like that kind of stuff, you know, it wasn't from Manny himself. Manny was I think talking to Albert Pujols at the time. But, you know, Jose, you know, that those are just memories, that kind of stuff that, like, whether you would listen to him or not, whether you treasured him growing up or not, whether you even know the language or not, it's, you know, he's a resource. He's a community resource. It's institutional knowledge that, you know, unfortunately we don't have many years left with these people. So it's something we should appreciate. I think it's just as fans of the game, fans of the team, whatever you may be.
Go ahead, Alonso.
Jorge Castillo from the LA Times joining us here for a few minutes. Before we set you loose, I had two questions. One, what did you think of Borrego?
It was good, man. Yeah. So we got it. It was like down the street from Julio's family's house. I had never had it before. I tried a lot of new things down there in Culiacan, so it was a good time.
Did you say frijoles were habichuelas to anyone, and were you escorted?
No. I knew my place. So a lot of my wife's family's from there. So she was actually down there too. We went there for 8 days. So we stayed at her aunt's house and all that. So I hung out with her aunts and, you know, uncles and asked a lot of questions, man. I made sure to get it right. You know, different phrases and que padre and all this stuff. It was a lot of stuff. And then Culiacan also has like their own like sort of vocabulary, from what I understand, their own jargon and all that. So it was a good time. But the Borrego was really good, and ate with our photographer and Julio's dad.
Did you try birria, like down there birria?
Yes, I believe. Yeah, I think one night we did. I ate a lot, man. It was a lot of food.
It sounds like you were in Mexico then.
Birria, I mean, everything. Three by everything. I had like asada, like, you know, we had everything, marisco, everything.
Do you casually throw the word way into stuff now too after spending 8 days?
The only person who used that word a lot was one of my wife's cousins. Like, no one else really used it as much. I was surprised by that, but he kept saying way, because I guess he went to school in Guadalajara and then lived in Mexico City. So he knew, he used it a lot. That's something apparently that people in those certain areas use, but not too many people in Culiacan, I guess.
Yeah. Fair. All right. So I'm going to throw up one last argument to you with the Sandy Alcantara thing, right? So admittedly, there's for sure something.
The man is voting for Sandy Alcantara, Alonso.
Hold on, shut up.
I'm not voting. I don't vote. I'm not voting.
This is why I'm trying to sway him, because also the market, Juan. I'm trying to help the guy. So there's obviously the innings argument is in favor of Sandy Alcantara. We can all agree to that, right? But the Dodgers are going to be a lot more careful with how they use those innings with Urias because that dude's going to pitch in October where Alcantara's not. And let's be honest, too, like you said, the Marlins aren't very good. Does that sway your opinion on why Julio Urias should not be a lock for the Cy Young?
No, it doesn't. But
damn it.
I think the best argument, one of the best arguments you can make is I saw the numbers for Alcantara's starts against good teams, like over 500 teams, and Julio's is substantially better.
Yeah.
So, I think you can manipulate the stats. You can look at stats a certain way, and you can come up with your own conclusion based on what you find important, based on your explicit or implicit biases. You can figure it, you can kind of do whatever you want with them. I think if Julio wins a Cy Young, I'm like, okay, cool. He deserves it. He worked, but I'm not, but if, it's like razor thin, I think Sandy Alcantara right now should win it. I mean, the last time he pitched against the Dodgers, it was a complete game, allowed one run. That's like the best offense in baseball. Like, guys, really good. And the arguments about, he's not pitching in important games, his team stinks, all that stuff, I think they're all valid. I think, but if you blend it all together, you bake it all in, I still think innings and his complete games. And I just think that's so important. And to hold up over the course of an entire season with that workload nowadays is so rare. There was the whole thing about him not starting the All-Star game, which was BS. Like, come on, Clayton Kershaw should have started it, and he started it because that's what fans want to see. Now this, I think, is a little different. I think this is who's the most outstanding pitcher in the National League. And again, if it's Julio, if it's Max Fried, even like his numbers are good, Kyle Wright. Like I really don't think you can you're gonna storm like the offices of the BBWA because like one of them won it, one of them didn't win it. I just think it's by a hair right now. It's Sandy Alcantara.
Fair. I was just trying to help you out because of the market. I just don't want people to come for you like Dylan Hernandez on the
internet.
Hey
man, Julio's had a great season. He should be the Dodgers' #1 starter. He's the best 100%. Pitcher on the best team in the major leagues. The best. If you go by run differential, it's like the best team since I googled it this morning. I was just wondering about the run differential. It's like the best since like the 1939 New York Yankees. Like this team is amazing, and Julio's the best pitcher on it and on that team. And I think obviously, if it was like postseason included by the end of the year, Julio probably would be the Cy Young Award winner by a good margin.
Yeah.
But we're looking at just the regular season and this regular season. If you can look back to last July, if you want to put all that together, then Julio probably should win it. But I think just based on this year alone, right now, September 29th, it is 3:45 p.m. Pacific, not Eastern. I'm gonna, I guess I would have voted Sandy Alcantara.
Okay, well, we know you got to go. We'll set you loose. Jorge Castillo, friend of the Carne Asada, now aficionado of Mexican food from Sinaloa, LA Times writer. Go follow him. He's a great follow on Twitter, and he puts out bangers of articles. The Jarrin article was fantastic. The getting to know the guy with the bad left eye and the great left arm, also a great article. Go check it all out. An all around good dude. Jorge Castillo, thank you for the time, man.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
And stopping by the Carne Asada for a few minutes. An old friend. He just got back from the mother country, Mexico. He works for the Los Tigres de Quintana Roo. He's a friend of the podcast. We've had him here before. Rafael Arroyo. Rafael, ¿cómo estamos?
Muy bien. Muchas gracias. Thank you guys for having me, man. It's always an honor to be with you guys and talk baseball, talk Dodgers, talk everything. It's right up my alley. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, the reason we called you is we wanted to talk Kenny Powers stuff, but there's something a little more important happening right now. There's a little bit of an award that's up for grabs, and what better guy to talk to about this is one of your friends and clients. Julio Urias is heavily considered for the NL Cy Young. We've all talked about this. We talked to Jorge Castillo about this. Obviously, we're going to talk to you about this. I'm of the mindset that I think it's Julio, and I don't even think it's close. I know a lot of people, including Jorge, have talked about the outlier of innings pitched. That should be a merit. I know you and I have kind of the same mindset as far as some of the traditionalist angles of the game, but I don't think innings pitched counts as much as it used to because guys get hurt. They kind of have guys on pitch counts in some cases, things like that. So the game has evolved, right? But there's other things that count. And my biggest one is Julio is going to be pitching meaningful baseball in Julio. I'm sorry, in octubre. Y Julio también is also just been on a tear. He's been on a tear, and he's showing everyone he is the best pitcher in the National League, in my humble opinion. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong. I agree with everything you said. And, to touch on the innings pitch thing, I think if that's going to be an argument this year for Alcantara having more innings than Julio, then we have to take a step back and kind of have the same criteria for Corbin Burns last year, who threw, I think it was 160 plus. Zach Wheeler threw, 213. And so those are kind of like the two big arguments. If you want to take a dive into the numbers, but I agree with you with Julio, going to be pitching in October. We can't really blame Julio if you want to take a look at the big picture. And the Dodgers are a very bright organization, very intelligent, very methodical with what they do. And I know it was hard for a lot of fans, including myself. When they start to limit his innings in April, May, June, where if you get 32 starts a year, and you take 1 inning per start, those are, that's 32 innings. If you take 1.5 or whatnot, that's 40. So that's going to creep you into the playoffs, where a guy like Sandy could just, empty the tank, and he's going to be, sitting at home in Dominican, watching baseball or vacationing. So, and that's no knock on Sandy Alcantara. He's an amazing talent. The guy's electric. He throws 100 miles an hour. He's filthy. He's nasty. He's a competitor. He wants the ball. And I love him for that. But when it comes to, who's been the best pitcher, there's a list of arguments that I can speak on with Julio, and it's just that, 31 starts. I know they took 1 start away from him, or they pushed him back. There was something going on there, which, is understandable. 32, he's held it down in that rotation, only guy in that whole rotation that has made all his starts. So, and it's not easy pitching in front of 50,000. People say, oh, well, it's easy for a guy to get up. Yes, it is easy, but it comes with the pressure. The Dodgers, big contract guys, winners, you have to win. Nobody cares about the NL West. Nobody cares about the NLDS, NLCS. It's about winning. So it comes with a lot of responsibility and accountability where, in Miami, you get 10, 11,000 people, maybe 2 or 3 reporters, so it really, there's that give and take. But again, not to take away anything from Sandy, but I think Julio should be the guy, no matter what numbers you look at. And I think they both go hand in hand as far as numbers go, where one guy will have slightly better numbers and the other guy will have the other better numbers. But at the end of the day, Julio Urias, I think, should be the NL Cy Young.
No, and I mean, listen, at the end of the day, innings pitched is an important metric, right? But I don't think it should be the one that everyone kind of hyper focuses on, because I think it's unfair, because Sandy Alcantara is going to be good for a long time. Like, there's no doubt. Assuming he is a Marlin for the rest of his career, probably not is my bet if I were to hedge my bets. But he's going to be good for a really long time. Julio has been on a tear realistically since the 2020 season. Like whatever he righted the ship, for lack of a better term, with every opportunity that went his way. And then this year, he's just been lights out. The best pitcher on this Dodger staff. Obviously there's a guy named Clayton Kershaw that is labeled as the ace, but Julio Urias is the ace of the staff. Like there's no bones about it. I know you lobby about that as well.
Yeah.
As far as that sort of stuff goes with Julio, because you know him better than anyone, does that affect his psyche in any way? That's something that I've been curious about with Julio, because he doesn't really say much either. So that's kind of the other thing that's kind of hard to read.
Yeah, well, Julio, he's very motivated. He's always been motivated. I don't think he needs any more motivation. He's always had that chip on his shoulder. You look at his, his upbringing and everything that he had to battle through. So I think it's a little added, for him being the guy. But he's always wanted to be the guy. He's always been the guy. So it's nothing, new to him. And he wants the ball. Same thing. He wants the ball every 5th day, and he wants to go out there and and pitch. That was funny because I was watching an interview. A reporter from Culiacan asked Dave Roberts. He asked him, why do you always take out Julio early? People in Culiacan want to see him pitch. And that's Julio's mentality. He doesn't say much. He's very reserved. But I know inside he's a competitor, and he wants to win. And that's why he took the ball, as a reliever. He took the ball as a closer. He took the ball with limited innings. He took the ball with limited, pitches per outing. He took the ball or they set up, certain breaks at certain times. And it was frustrating for him, but he's a professional. He's mature. And again, at the end of the day, he just wanted to win. and he will do whatever it takes to win and to earn that respect and that opportunity. He knows, the pecking order. He understands Clayton Kershaw's greatness. He understands Walker Buehler and all these guys. But, he's Julio Urias, and he's going to give, 100% of what he has every time, no matter what the situation.
Well, and someone that does that here every week, Alicia del Valle. Go ahead, Alicia.
I try not to take it personally, but Rox, you brought up 2020. I mean, this year, Julio has been Mr. Consistent. There's like nobody that gives Dodger fans the calm. Once Julio takes the mound, we kind of understand what's coming and we've been spoiled, right? The argument that you just made for Julio grabbing and getting and while deserving of the Cy Young Award is what last night at the game someone used against him. So someone brought up, Julio's amazing. However, Alcantara, look at what he works with. His team is terrible. The Dodgers, the run support. But am I wrong? I'm not a big numbers nerd guy the way my co-hosts are. But he does not have.
It got kind of cold in here, huh, guys? You feel that shade? That was shade, right?
It was bright and then it got dark.
I think the kids call that shade, right? Go ahead.
He doesn't get the same run support that he did the year he won 20 games, and that's numbers. That's a fact. So it's like he's being punished, Julio, for having the best team in baseball. And the Dodgers do, again, for over 10 years, we have led MLB in attendance by far, every team, even, that team on the East Coast. So, I mean, is there an argument to be made? Like, what do we need to do to tell people it's not cool, man. I want Julio to get the Cy Young. What do we got to do?
Well, the run support argument, that can go both ways. As far as if you're going to say, what was Julio's record early on? He was like 3-6 with like a 2 or something, something like that, right?
Right.
So he had the worst run support that first month and a half. So had he, got more run support, he would have been a 20-game winner again, because that's only 3 wins. He's at 17 now, maybe 18 by Tuesday. So that's unheard of in itself, to win 20 games back-to-back in an analytical era where wins are undervalued. I think that, to me, that's even more impressive. So you can argue anything each way, like you said. At the end of the day, who's the best pitcher? Who would you want on the mound? I think either one is. But if you're gonna weigh everything, like I said, Miami 11,000, Dodgers 50, the responsibility, and Julio's still fighting to make his name. He's really never been like, okay, you're gonna be our number 2 starter, you're gonna be our ace. So that's that chip on his shoulder that he continues to have. Early on in the season, they talked about his velocity being down, and oh my God, 89 miles an hour, that gets old. So there's always that pressure where if Sandy Alcantara is throwing 95, nobody cares. He's throwing 100, nobody, so it's not a big, so there's a lot of pressure that comes with being that guy every 5th day. So I think any argument for one side or the other, whether it be numbers or whether it be, who's been the horse? Well, they both have been horses, but let's put Sandy, on the Dodgers. Can he handle the pressure? Can he handle, hey, Sandy, why did you throw that 3-2 slider with 20 reporters here? And then now you got Freddie Freeman over here. You got Kershaw over here. So can we consider that too? That's another good argument, and I think the run support difference is like, I think 4.7 for Julio, if I'm not mistaken, and like 3.4 for Sandy. So it's not like 6 runs versus 2.
Yeah.
So it's a run. Yeah, it's a lot. But again, there's other elements that come with that pressure of having to still go out there and pitch and put up zeros.
Is there ever, and thank you for that. I'm recording this and I'm going to save it for the next time I hear that.
I got more arsenal. I got a lot of arsenal here. I'm telling you, I did a little homework.
Is there ever, I'm like an emotional fan. Okay. Is there ever is it okay, or is it etiquette with a traditionalist to say he should have already received the Cy Young, or like put some respect on his name? Again, I'm bringing up the 20-win season. We never even heard mumbles of him for the Cy Young. Do you know what I mean? And it was insulting.
Yeah.
So is sentiment, is there ever like a do-over? Like, oh, he should have got it, like the Oscars or whatever, you know? Is there ever a time that the voters will say, well, he probably should have had it the first time he dominated the season? So does that count towards getting him the Cy Young?
I don't think it does, but it does. Like you said, does it kind of roll over? I don't think anybody. No, a lot of people don't even know he won 20 games last year, and I think it was a bit insulting for him not to even be considered in the Cy Young voting. You know, even third place, second place, which I thought he was more deserving. 20-game winner, that's unheard of. 3 losses, and I get it. He got a lot of run support, but again, he held it down in that rotation. He made every start. He did everything that was asked of him. He went into the playoffs. They bumped him that last game of the year, which was frustrating. And then they used him out of the bullpen in Atlanta when I think they shouldn't have. So he never once spoke bad about the Dodgers and he's a professional. Like I told you, he's very mature, very professional. So all those things considered, I felt like he's a guy that will take the ball whenever, however, against whoever. And, I think a lot of people turn the page on that. So we keep it in our hearts and we keep it in the back of our minds, but that fuels him for this year. I think he turns that negative into a positive and it's showing. But I think if he does get it, then we'll be able to go back and say, yeah. And by the way, I won 20 games last year. By the way, I did this, and that, and I think that gets magnified too. So he'll get his due respect, hopefully, when it's deserved. And I believe in that as a purist. I believe in that. As I believe in baseball gods, I think everything, kind of, if the gods mess it up a little bit, they'll get it right. So that's what I'm hoping for.
And to interject real quick, I apologize to Alicia. Out of the 10 guys that got votes, he was the only guy with 20 wins.
Yeah,
that's the preposterous thing. And Corbin Burns, who won, was 11-5, if I'm not mistaken, and then Zach Wheeler was 14-10. And here we are saying that Zach Wheeler should have been the guy. So again, as from all the logic goes out the damn window is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Hashtag
Right.
Oscars so white. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I ran an unofficial Twitter poll, and it was 82% to 18%. I said who should win the NL Cy Young, and it was 82 to 18 Julio Urias. But I don't know my following if they're Dodger fans or not. But
I think you got a lot of Dodger fans
Yeah,
on your, following you, Rafael.
I got some love in Miami though. So
yeah. No, for sure. And I know Juan, I wanted to talk. I'm going to pass it over to Juan because you said something that I know I'm waiting and making sure that he caught on. Juan,
Well, no, the thing is, when I wanted to talk to you about Rafael, I mean, you worked, first of all, I want to just recognize one thing. Rafael was our first guest ever on the Bleed Lows podcast.
Oh, is that right?
You are our first guest.
Wow.
So we popped our cherry with you. And so we're very thankful. We're very thankful that not only you trusted us to come and be the guest on the show for the first time, but to come back, it means a lot. But you worked, you've worked with Julio intimately. You guys are out there working out, and I gotta ask you. Our friend of the carne asada, Jorge Castillo, wrote about it, and that is the toughness that Julio. I mean, mechanic-wise, I'm sure you can speak to his mechanics, and because his mechanics are so strong, is probably part of the reason why he's been able to make all his starts this year. But to me, it's the mental aspect of it, the poise. When he gets in jams, he can get out of jams. And that's something to me, like mechanics, you can work with a pitcher, right? With mechanics. But if in their head, they start panicking. I mean, we saw it the other day. The Rockies gave 6 walks in 1 inning. The Dodgers won that game basically because the Rockies handed it to them. You don't see that with Julio. I don't know how many starts in a row Julio had where he only gave up 1 home run. And what was it? It was a solo home run. It's either a pitch he missed or he challenged a guy and the guy beat him, right? But in terms of the mental poise, is that something you can learn, or do you have to have it in you? Because Jorge Castillo in that story wrote I think one of the greatest savage comebacks ever when those Padre fans, the Show Pods fans, were giving it to Julio about his eye. And Julio says to him, look what I did to your team. And that was with one good eye. Could you imagine what I would do to your team with two good eyes? Where does that mental toughness come, and can that be taught or learned?
I think it's a little bit of both. And that was one of the things that I was asked about that too. They said, are guys like Julio, are they born or are they made? And superstars are born, but they're also made where it's a lot of work that goes into that gift that God has given him. So I think it's a little bit of both, and it's deeply rooted to his family. It's deeply rooted from his grandparents to his parents, obviously his childhood and the adversity that he had to deal with at such a young age. I was fortunate enough to, like you said, work with him a lot, and I get to know his family. I want to know that as a trainer because I need to know what's in there, as you said, like how much can I push him? How tough is he? And I need to know all those things so that it makes my job easier, so that I know when to pull back and when to push a little more. So I think that comes, part of the Mexican culture, part of the Culichi culture, people from Culiacan. They're humble, hardworking people. His parents are just that. They're very strong people. And then that gets transmitted on down generation to generate, or by generation. Julio's born, and then now he's living a very humble life, and he has to deal with that issue. And as he gets older, he hears it all. So it just gets calloused up. It's almost like the David Goggins mentality where, you hear so much, and you just callous it up. And then now you're able to focus on that. So for him, and I say this with all due respect and love, all those surgeries he had to deal with and all those fearful moments, about his eye, pitching in front of 50,000 with the bases loaded and Manny Machado up, to him, it's like, I've been here before and I've overcome those things before. I'm playing a game. At the end of the day, you're playing a game and you got to compete and execute. So I think it's a little bit of both. And you're right. He, when I met him, he was, I think 17 or 18. And he reached out to me through social media, and just the way he spoke to me, I was like, how old is this kid? Like, he's 18. Yeah, he was 18. And he sounded like a 35-year-old dad, just very respectful, showed up on time. And when he speaks to me in usted, always, even to the day, usted, lo que usted diga, paisa, usted. And that's a form of, just the maturity that he has. So back to the Rockies, you see these young kids come up, maybe they're not ready for the big leagues. Maybe they're a little scared to be intimidated to be facing that lineup, and the game speeds up on them. And that's the anxiety and that's the pressure. And I'm trying, and then everything is moving fast. The game looks slow to us, but on that mound, that game is, Grand Prix. It's just spinning. So Julio has been able to, throughout life, but also the pressures of being a 16-year-old signed, with the Dodgers, 17 in A-ball, 18 in AA or whatnot, 18, 19 in the big leagues. All those moments have built him to be able to throw that 97-mile-an-hour fastball to close out a World Series without sweat.
Yeah.
So it's impressive.
So let me ask you this. I mean, we all saw the Last Dance where Jordan is basically making up bullshit stories just so he can get motivated to kill a guy off the bench, right? Yeah. Because he was just an assassin, right? So if Julio doesn't win the Cy Young, can't he use that as a chip? I mean, to motivate himself even more? Because let me tell you, if the Dodgers win the World Series this year, Julio is going to play a big part of that. So now he will have played a big part in 2 championships for the Dodgers. And even if he doesn't have a Cy Young, to me that translates, pay me. Mm-hmm. He's going to get paid because everyone knows. The same way you looked at that red-ass Madison Bumgarner, you can hate him all you want, but in the postseason, he shut it down. He brought that championship. So you could say the same thing about Julio. So yeah, you may not give him the Cy Young Awards, but hey man, the guy delivers, and he delivered you 2 championships. So right. Is he the type of guy who would use that as a chip on his shoulder?
100%. It's nothing personal against everybody or anybody, but I know that all the battles are within him. He wants to prove to himself. There's never any malice against anybody else or whatnot. But yeah, he does take that. And in my opinion, he should have been a 2-time All-Star, and he should have been considered for the Cy Young. He was leading the league in wins last year. And this year he was up there. If we're not looking at wins, as they say, so we're looking at ERA and we're looking at what he's done for the club. So in my opinion, 2-time All-Star. and at least Cy Young consideration. But yeah, he takes all that, and any athlete will do that, not just Julio. I think, you look at it, they'll give you the politically correct answer, but I know that in this offseason when he's training, he has to get better, and he's going to get better, and that's going to be the fuel that it's like, what more do I have to do? Okay, 20 wins isn't enough. Okay, I'm going to lead the league in ERA. That's not enough? That's fine. Okay, what am I going to do next year? Then he might hit the trifecta. He might go, 13-0 with a sub-1 and be an all-star. And then he's going to go out and win 22, 23 games. So I think it's all motivating for him. And again, to your point of him being a big part of the Dodgers this year and then on into the playoffs, we all want to get paid, no matter what business you're in, right? So for him, he's on the best stage. So aside from those awards maybe not given, but I think if he gets compensated on that side of it, whether it's the Dodgers or another team that pays attention and they know what kind of product they're getting, I think all of that is going to be thrown into that equation as well.
My interactions with him in the locker room, I could see he comes off as shy. I don't know if that's him. I don't know if it's him trying to protect his image. Part of me feels like he has the talent for a superstar. He would probably be a more well-recognized superstar, maybe if he was allowed to show a little bit more personality. But, it's hard when he's doing every interview with a translator, right? I mean, we all know this at Dodger Stadium. For years now, we have been craving for a Mexicano to be on the Dodgers. And the minute he showed up, everybody's wearing the Urias jerseys, right? Yeah. And it's like, okay, I can retire my Valenzuela jersey and I'll rock Urias now because we got a Mexican on there. Does Julio have it in him to show more personality, or is he just a reserved guy who's just going to go out there and play?
Yeah, he's a bit of an introvert. He is, he's on the shy side of things. I think eventually as he evolves, and I think naturally with anybody, you look at like Fernando and at least what I know of it, and Jaime Jarrin being there for him, it brings a level of comfort. I know for Fernando, he's also the same way. He's a very shy guy, man, a few words. He sees everything though. But I think Julio also will evolve into that. I don't think he has the personality, Julio, to be like a really loud, outspoken. That's just not him. But I think he will evolve. Where he starts to interview in English and he starts maybe, hopefully a foundation or getting involved a little bit more. And it's not easy. I respect all those guys that do stuff. Like the Justin Turners of the world that go out and do stuff in the community, because that's above and beyond, man. That's very commendable. And I think Julio will eventually get into that, because I know that there are a lot of plans with him and what he wants to do with youth baseball in Mexico. And it's already begun. And what he wants to do in Mexico and even LA, because we do have such a Latino community, Mexican based. And like you said, there's a lot of Urias jerseys. There's also Tomateros jerseys. So he's an international, kind of star with Mexico, and then the Tomateros being the Dodgers of Mexico. So there's a lot there, and I think eventually he will. It's just, and we would talk in English, where we'd kind of work on it a little bit, but I truly believe he will, and hopefully that day sooner than later.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Alonso.
All right. Rafael Arroyo joining us here for a few more minutes. So before I set you loose, I want you to litigate a point for me. So I'm going to give you some data, and I think you know where I'm going with this. So before the All-Star break, Julio was 8-6 record-wise, wins and losses, with a 2.89 ERA. After the All-Star game, which he was snubbed out of, for the record, just going to throw that out there, #Petty. He is 9-1 with a 1.10 ERA. What changed?
I think a couple things. Nothing to do with numbers. I think part of it was a little bit of strength that was built. I know he works real well with Travis there and the strength and conditioning people, and everyone with the Dodgers. They do a great job. I think some of the strength that any player really accumulates throughout the year started to build up. So he hit that All-Star break. That those 3-4 days to reset, kind of just reset the mind, reset the body, everything. So I think that helped. I also think any snubbed helped. I think not being an All-Star, he goes out there and he wants to prove something to the world, not just not just to baseball, but the whole world. So I think that's part of it. Also, the team kind of locked it down, and the boys started rolling. So it's easy. Once the boys get going, you get going. Not easy, but there's a synergy there. So, and you know how this game is, man. You get in a hot streak, brother. You ride it. So I think those three things. I think throughout the year he got better rhythm. His mechanics. He did a little something with his leg lift. He slowed it down a little bit. I don't know if you guys saw. He was kind of toying with some things. And I always say it. He's close to where I personally would love him mechanically. There's one little detail there. So he's probably firing like at 90% of what I think his 100% is. But yeah, I think those three things just caught on, and boom, the rest is history. And then you start to see the finish line at the end, and you get motivated by the playoff push and all that. So solidifying that. And I think one more little detail is, once Gonsolin kind of went down, and Kershaw, Buehler, and those guys were having some health issues, that was a perfect moment for him to say, okay, don't worry, fellas, I got you. Let me hold it down for you guys. And that's Julio Urias. That's who he is.
Juan, what's the saying that we have around here?
Which one? We have a lot of them, like no pasa nada.
That one.
No pasa nada. No pasa nada.
Remember how I told you, because you were one of the ones that was worried as far as that stuff went, that it was just him having to get himself into a rhythm. No pasa nada.
Oh yeah, that at the beginning of the season, everybody was making a big deal about his velocity. His velocity being down, and now you don't hear any of that stuff.
No.
Yeah. You don't. Look, I've said this many a times. I believe there is a Dodgers tax. I mean, first of all, the guy's an uphill battle because he's going to deal with the East Coast bias, and Rafael can prove that shit is real because he was with the Mets. Look, if you don't see him every day, if you don't see what he had to do, that's part of the reason that I have issues with the voting process. Is if you're not seeing these guys every day, how can you vote for them? But to me, I think La Princesa de Picolandia has a great idea. Alicia, why don't tell them what you want to do?
Well, we were talking with Jorge Castillo, LA Times writer, and I kind of jokingly but not was like, what do we need to do to get Julio more recognition because of said East Coast bias? And by the way, Jorge does not vote, right? He said he doesn't want to vote.
Yeah.
He has a problem himself with the way it votes. I mean, he didn't get into details, but it sounds like he does not want to be a voter.
Es que es pura mafia.
Yeah, right?
Shout out to Jorge. Great article too that he did, man.
Right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
But I brought up, should we start a Twitter campaign? Like, what should we do to be like Julio, Urias for Cy Young? And we're all laughing and stuff, but he's like, yeah, you should. So that's been in my mind, like, wait, should we? I don't know if that's, again, against – it could piss people off that consider themselves traditionalists and purists. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think – well, yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't think it would piss them off if they're purists, though, because I think they would be for Urias. I think it'd be a great idea, especially now how we can connect, on a screen and the power by numbers. And like I said, and everybody in Culiacan would be pushing that. People in Culiacan are very passionate baseball fans. So, nothing but respect for Culiacan, Tomateros, everyone there. I love that place. I call it now my future home. But it'll be great. It'll be great. And I think, the East Coast bias, the writers, they just don't. And I think there's a little bit of, Dodgers, the mighty Dodgers, there's a little bit of that too. That's just the reality of it. But yeah, I think that'd be a great idea. And anything I can do to help. Obviously, I'm biased, but
no, because you're going to have some way over there going, oh, I could win 20 games if I played on the Dodgers.
Yeah, well, that's what they say.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And that's the Dodgers tax. Yeah. That's the thing that Julio's going to have to face. He's going to lose votes because people are going to be like, oh, well, that team is stacked. He has an advantage, like what you had mentioned before with Alcantara. He doesn't have the same side of support. And it's just, it's unfortunate. It's bullshit. But I think Alicia's right. We should just go down to the jaripeo. Put up the sign. Just hold up the sign, Julio for Cy Young, and just get everybody. Just get everybody in Picolandia to vote.
That argument I think holds water because if you put Julio in Miami, Julio wins 20 plus games easy if he's pitching this way, right? So. So the run support thing, we can do the mental gymnastics behind it, but at the end of the day, it's not apples for apples, right? And I think that's the one thing that gets lost in the fray But I do agree with you. I think we should go to Jaripeo, man, because the food is fire. So I mean, we get some signs out there. Taquito, y ya se armó.
I'll bring the banda from Culiacan. I'll bring
There
the
you go.
marisco.
There we go.
Hey Juan, I forgot to drop this in. Juan, I was the
Yeah.
first guest. At least you'll appreciate this. I was the first guest on George Lopez's "Oh My God Hi" podcast as well, man.
Oh, that's right.
And I know.
You're quite the good
I'm
luck
a good
charm.
leadoff hitter.
You are.
There you go.
Yeah.
I get on
We,
base, baby. That's what I do.
I love it. I love it.
He's batting 1,000, but none of us can vote for the Cy Young. That's the irony.
That's
of it all.
right.
I'm the Mookie Betts of the carne asada.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, and if you're not following Rafael Arroyo, you should go follow him. Rafael, where can they follow you?
You can follow me, Rock System, on Instagram or Twitter, and personal account is RoxArroyo58 on Instagram. Anything health, anything baseball, anything spirituality, I got it, man. So whatever you guys need, I got you guys.
You'll see Rafael roughing it out there in the jungles of Mexico, just eating rock coconuts, just struggling.
right.
The
That would
jungles
keep
of
them
Tulum.
Listen, thank you for stopping by and litigating this with us. We really appreciate it. But most importantly, thank you again for coming back. We're humbled to call you a friend and a friend of the carne asada. So thank you, man.
Oh, thank you guys, man. I appreciate it. And like I said, you guys, I know me and ADV go way back, and you guys, doing the first podcast. So you guys are Dodger family, and hopefully the writers get it right. If not, then we got more fuel for next year and get that ring and keep it going.
Y si no, putazos para todos.
Exactly.
That's right. Thanks again, Rafael.
Thank you, Rox.
You got it. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
it.